What is up, y'all? Hope you're doing well. My name is Scott Bell, and I am an outdoor adventure filmmaker. And in today's video, we are going to start breaking down the film that I have been working on for the last year called Blueprint. It's a short film for Shimano where we're highlighting mountain bike trail building and just all that goes into creating a trail for your community.
When you come into a new zone, the dirt is almost like your paint. It's a certain color, it's a certain texture, and really inspires the creativity.
There's a million different ways to build a section of trail, but everybody has their own, and it's kind of nice to put your own artistic touch on it.
So before we get into any of the content of this video, I'd love if you go down the description below and go over to Mark Matthews' YouTube channel where you can watch the full film. There will be spoilers in this, and I'd just appreciate it if you get to experience the film firsthand before seeing any of the behind the scenes. We are going to be diving into this project over a series of videos, probably 4 to 5 videos that will be breaking down many different segments of how this project came together. I really want to make sure that I'm sharing as much as I can with you about the process and answer any questions that you might have. So this first video is going to focus on the creation of the idea for this project in hopes that that might give you some inspiration on things that you're working on. We'll dive into how we actually accomplish some of the visual effects in the piece, do sort of a straightforward behind the scenes of shooting the writing in it. And then at the end of the whole thing, I want to get together with a few of the other teammates and we're just going to chat about the project and some of our memories about it and any questions you might have. So if there's things that are in your mind that you're wondering about how we accomplished it, drop them down in the comments below and we will be sure to get those into the conversation that we have as a group. But for today, we're going to be talking about how to go from that place where you have an idea to developing it into something that you're ready to pitch to a client and making sure that you've actually worked through the process to make the best possible product that you can make and really make the idea that you have shine. Now, in this video, this is the first spoiler, you are going to see effects where the trail is actually growing in front of the rider as they're riding it. So this idea came when I was watching another video by Anthill Films called The Legend of Tommy G. If you haven't watched that, give it a quick watch, but there's a small little segment in there where the rider hits this jump, and while in the air, the feature below him is being elongated, basically. The landing is being pushed back, and it's happening in a time lapse with an excavator doing all the work while the rider is just kind of flying through the air. And it was just a cool video, but this little seed of an idea of seeing the trail change while the rider was riding it started to get my brain turning. And if any of you guys follow Mark Matthews, you know that he's a really avid trail builder, and he does a lot of these build lapses. So it's basically a time lapse of him building the trail. And these two ideas sort of merged together. And I was like, hey, Mark, what if we did a video where the trail is growing in front of you, or you're maybe building the trail in front of you as you're riding it? Wouldn't that be a cool idea? And he was super stoked. He was on board to try this. And we set out to start figuring out how to execute this and make something that was believable, basically. Now, the first time that we got together, we didn't want to spend a lot of time on seeing if this was going to work. We just wanted to kind of hack something out quickly, just to kind of prove the concept to ourselves that it was like, this is kind of cool. And so we set up a camera on a tripod and we set up a time lapse and we went away at building a section of trail. It was taking a photo every 10 seconds or something like that. And then without moving the tripod, we shot Mark in a video clip riding down that section of trail. And I was able to bring that into the computer and composite those two things together and basically reveal the trail through the time lapse and kind of show that rider coming through. We won't get into all the nuts and bolts of how I did it. We'll talk about that in a later video. Now, the first ones, we had us building the trail while the rider was coming in, and we found it to be a bit busy. We also tried it in slow motion just to see if that would look any different, and still it was just like too much going on, kind of distracting to the eye. So we tried just doing it with a simple mask where we had the completed trail and we had the rider coming through, and it would kind of reveal the trail as they approach it. And while it didn't totally work at this point in time, I kind of kept that idea of this masking effect to reveal the completed trail for later on. So at this point, we were like, all right, we have a cool idea here. Let's try to hone this a little bit more before we approach somebody that might want to fund this project. And we shot another version of this. This time we did stop motion rather than time lapse. So we would build a section of trail, take a shot, build a small little section, take a shot, and keep going back and forth and building just like 1 foot of the trail at a time. And this was extremely time consuming, but seemed kind of like it was working. And then again, we shot Mark riding through after the whole trail was done. And it was kind of cool. It was a little bit clunky looking. We weren't 100% satisfied, but we took this idea and we showed that to Shimano with the rest of a pitch, basically, figured out a rough budget for this and had some conversations with them, and we were able to actually execute this project and get their support, which was completely amazing. At that point, we knew we had a really solid idea. We knew the client was on board, but we really wanted to hone it a little bit more. And what we thought might add something is if there was some movement to the camera. Now, this is something Shimano mentioned in one of our calls. They said, can you make the camera move or anything like that? And that was sounding complicated at first, but I started to think about that idea a bit more and decided that a slider could be employed to actually do this. So I started to research different sliders. I borrowed a buddy's just to see how time-lapse would work in a moving slider. And I did this little thing on my countertop in my kitchen, kind of drawing a trail with objects obscuring it, and could we make that motion look believable in time lapse? And as you can see, it kind of works, and it was enough for me to say, okay, let's go this slider route. It's worth trying. And I investigated a couple different sliders and ended up going with the Kessler crane. They are kind of that beginner level pro equipment. So fairly expensive, but worth it to add the extra movement into the shots. We're getting like parallaxing of the trees and just making it so that it's harder to tell actually how we executed this shoot. So once we had the slider in hand, we went out again and we started to do some additional bits of trail where we were building little short sections of trail. It was, a foot or 6 inches at a time. And while it worked, as you can see, it still was a little bit clunky, and building a trail this way was extremely unrealistic. I wasn't an experienced trail builder at the start of this project. Now that I've been building a trail with the rest of the crew for the last year, I understand how completely impossible it would have been to try to build this whole trail 6 inches at a time and expect it to actually work properly. So we took this as good information and decided to go back to that original idea of using a mask, but try to hone that technique so that we could actually make it look believable and execute it in a repeatable way. What I want you to take as the message from this video is when you have an idea, make sure you're really working through possible alternatives, working through problems, actually trialing it a few times to get it to that place where it is a really honed, dialed in thought and represents the vision that you have. I think if we hadn't done all these iterations to get the concept to where it ended up being, we just wouldn't have as strong of an idea. And I'm really happy with how all the shots ended up coming together. Really glad we added the motion to those shots because it just brings them to the next level. So that's all for this video. I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight of what that process looked like to start this concept for our video. Now, it grew far beyond that as we started to actually film things, and we realized that the visual effect was just a piece of a much larger project. It was the story and the documentary component behind trail building that really made this project shine for me. And what started as this kind of interesting idea turned into something that had some really inspirational thoughts around building trails for your community and getting out there and appreciating nature. So you never know where a little idea is going to take you, and that's why I encourage you just to continue to push yourself to find the best solution for the different projects that you're working on. So if there's any questions about developing this idea, drop them down in the comments below. If there's any questions about the video as a whole, I'd love to hear those. Feel free to send me a message on Instagram or drop it down in the comments. I want to keep developing this series as we go on, but stay tuned for more videos on this topic. I hope you find something interesting in here. Till the next time, get out there, make something beautiful, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.